Good evening and most welcome to this webinar called Borders Resurfacing and Process on Distance. I am Ulrika Larsen and I am the curator and producer of the Nava Gati Festival, a festival during 4 days for contemporary Indian dance. And we had a webinar this morning or earlier today about more of the labels that we can put on what we choose, what kind of labels we choose for the dance form that is known as the Indian classical dance, and about the processes and creative, the innovations, how we reach there. And today I have the privilege to present and to have a conversation with the Post Natyam Collective. I'm very happy to have you here, and I will start my presentation with Jean-Paul Zaccarini, who is here with me today, my sidekick. I invited him to have a more, I feel that it is so much in the work of Post Natyam Collective that I can't take that responsibility for myself. I have to have in other knowledge. And I will present you. Jean-Paul Zaccarini is a doctor in philosophy in performance studies, with the thesis based in the use of psychoanalysis in the creation of contemporary circus performance. He is now Professor of Performing Arts at the Research Center at Stockholm University of the Arts. He has been a practitioner in theater, dance, mime, circus, with a focus on poetry and the spoken word, as both performer and director, dramaturg, and also choreographer for 32 years. He is currently researching the intersections between art, therapy and activism in his project Future Black Space, which is a creative space for BIPOC to work by BIPOC, maybe, to work with radical healing and decolonizing artistic research in majority white institutions and fields. Welcome, Jean-Paul.
Thank you so much.
I hope I did justice to
You did. Thank you so much.
Yes, and we have the members of the Post Natyam Collective, which is a transnational web-based coalition of dance artists whose work triangulates between art making, activism and theory. Committed to the political possibility of collaboration, our online process allows them to lovingly debate feminist-of-color, queer and post-colonial issues through the body, creating interdisciplinary dance and media work with a critical edge. Post Natyam Collective members are steeped in South Asian and other movements forms. And today, we have Shyamala Moorty. She's a director, choreographer and facilitator who values collaboration, connection and transformation through the arts. Her interdisciplinary work draws on dance, theater, multimedia, yoga and community engagement, and has been described as that special kind of healing that art can accomplish. And with an MFA in dance from UCLA, her performance work has toured in many countries. Shyamala is also the founding member of the Post Natyam Collective and the Dancing Storytellers, and she is currently teaching dance composition at California State University, Long Beach. And she's also directing films. Welcome, Shyamala. And we have Cynthia Ling. She instigates post-colonial, queer and feminist-of-color interventions in the field of body-based performance, committed to intimate collaborative processes and foregrounding marginalized voices and aesthetics. Her interdisciplinary performance work has been presented at venues such as dance theater workshop and many more. Cynthia is an associate professor of dance in the Department of Performance, Play and Design at UC Santa Cruz. Welcome, Cynthia. And Dr. Sandra Chatterjee is a founding member of the Post Natyam Collective. She teaches, researches, performs, and organizes projects at the intersection of theory and dance artistic practice, focusing on gender, post-colonial, and migration studies. Currently, she works on independent choreographic projects. Most recently, Smells of Racism is part of the research team project Border Dancing Across Time at the University of Salzburg, and is establishing Chakars, Moving Interventions, an initiative dedicated to intersectional, anti-racist, post-migrant and post-colonial approaches to choreography in Munich, together with Sara Berg and Ariadne Jacobi. Welcome, Sandra. I hope that you have seen the works of the Post Natyam Collective just recently shown on YouTube as a part of the Nava Gati Festival. Because it is a curated, it's a special selection made for this festival on migration and borders, on sorrow, and also it is connecting with the ongoing pandemic. And this webinar will circulate around certain topics in overall. The Post Natyam Collective members will talk about methods on long distance process, which is a very interesting part of their work. And also the use of South Asian stylized gestures, which is a particular interest for me. So I will forward some questions to you on that. And we are also applying another look at your work and applying the so-called universal gaze, and the question of whether a work that is situated and saturated with cultural specificity. Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Good to help.
Yes. So I will start to just tell a little about this process on distance. With members scattered across the globe, Post Natyam started experimenting with creating a long-distance web-based process already in 2008. And I think now many artists all around the world, including me, we are more or less forced to do it, and we are discovering and rediscovering new ways and how to deal with them. When you are not in the same stage, you cannot share the same room and space. It is very interesting that you have been doing this for a long time, and you have a lot of experience. The process consists of posting creative assignments, responses, feedback, creating a virtual studio space to investigate different topics, artistic practices, and to generate new creative material. And before I will let you in and speak about this, I would like to show a small film about this in a playful and very interesting way, how it can look when Post Natyam Collective is working, and about the communication we do.
We can hear you now. What's that sound? Oh no, I think we lost Sandra.
Thank you, Roberto. Yes, I think this is a lovely example of how where many of us are today, but you were quite ahead of your time. And this is a nice example of how you use the method and the process materials, making art of it. It is quite interesting. I would like to let you in and please share with us how you met and why you started to working together, and what made you start this across the globe distance work. It would be really interesting to see how you found a way of communicating that works so well, I think.
We all met through our graduate studies, slightly at different times at UCLA in Los Angeles. And I think that something that bonded us was maybe being different than the dominant aesthetic, and trying to find like minds that could relate and support each other's work and voices, and thus feel like we understood somebody or each other, you know? Somebody who got each other's aesthetic and could give relevant feedback, and also eventually start working together. Anything to add?
No, yeah, you really summarized it. Yes, that was exactly. We were all in the same program at UCLA at different times, and well, not in the same program, in the same department. So, as graduate students, either in different degree tracks or at slightly different times. But, yes, so that's where we started dialoguing on how to sort of fulfill the kind of assignments or challenges or questions that were put to us, but from this perspective of being trained in classical Indian dance, which obviously shifts how we address it or how we can approach it. And so that it became a way of supporting dialoguing about this from a similar perspective in a parallel way. So yeah.
And pretty quickly we all started moving away, right? Sandra is in Munich. Anjali Tata, who was another member at the time, moved to Berkeley and then to Kansas. So the long distance happened pretty immediately for us.
That made you find a way of working quite fast. I mean, to give yourself assignments and to work on it and somehow meet in that.
We didn't actually figure that out until Cynthia came in much later.
Yeah, so
took us a while.
Shyamala and Sandra and Anjali, I think, are founding members of the collective, and they asked me to join, I think in late 2007, and I said yes and joined at the beginning of 2008. And I had just finished graduate school. I was like, I want to make work. And there are all these, like, I think at the time that they were using Skype, you know, old school Skype, like you saw in the video just now, for administrative and planning meetings, but mostly the making of the work was still organized around trying to organize in-person residencies and fundraise for that and plan for that. And my response was like, that was great, but could we just start making work right away? And I was a bit inspired by, I don't know if any of you know Remy Charlot's male dances, very old by this time. So he was an illustrator as well as a choreographer, and he would create these scores that were like pictures of different figures. And that was his choreography, and he would physically mail it through snail mail to different dancers who would then create movement inspired by his scores. And that it was this like male dances, he called it. And I was like, let's do a virtual version of male dances, but using the internet. And because this technology, this is 2008 we're talking about, so it was like Blogspot and Skype, and so we just started this pretty simple initially process of just rotating, giving each other creative prompts, and then we would get a few weeks to complete them and upload them, and then like a week to give each other feedback, and then we would just rotate like that. And that was the beginning of our online virtual collaborations. Yeah.
It was also at the same time that I had just sort of relocated to Europe, and I was doing this sort of course in culture and organization in Vienna at the time. And so we were thinking, and I was using Post Natyam really as the example. And as the project I was working on. And so, but I was thinking more about organizational structures and how to organize a collective structure, like from an arts organizational point of view. And so those two things sort of, I think, came together as well at the same time, thinking about communication structures and this and that. And so I think that was an interesting way of thinking the creative and the artistic from Cynthia's impulses together with that. So, yeah.
Can I ask something about establishing a space online well before any of us were establishing rooms and spaces and studios online? Can I ask you if that gave you a certain sense of agency and freedom outside of those dominant aesthetics you were just talking about, considering that you're from graduate programs where you are, in one sense, having to make your own little enclaves of non-dominant aesthetics. I'm not going to put too fine a point on it. I'm just interested, like so early on, did you find more freedom, more agency within this space than you might have done?
Absolutely.
I suppose with every constraint, there is endless possibility. So obviously we were constrained by distance, and yet having that constant dialogue with each other and that constant generation of ideas and information back and forth did constantly open up, endless possibilities.
And the other thing was too that, we work in the kind of field that was and maybe still is really difficult to get funded in and for. So to have so it gave us a way to work independently of having the money to fly to each other, to spend 2 months paid sort of like in residencies, or a substantial, I'm just saying 2 months because it's a kind of a substantial amount of time spent together on creative work, versus just like we all notice now at being able to do things at home, you can just do it alongside other work you do locally or other means of teaching or pursuing other sort of more money making activities. So that actually also was a lot of the freedom, and that was also a lot of the ways of using very inexpensive, we called it grassroots grassroots technology, free services or like inexpensive services, and also inexpensive technology, just webcams and not just to generate material, rather than sort of at that time like dance and technology tended to be more fancy or more like a fancy technology versus what we were doing a bit more rough. Yeah.
I would say we started working in this way actually precisely because there was an absence of local communities with shared not only training but like political values. And so even though each of us is very different and we disagree all the time, and that's like a vibrant part of our working together, there's like a kind of shared core of political, ethical values that lets us be together and support each other in a particular kind of way. And I found that, at least for me, I was much more unafraid being in this kind of like virtual home space with these partners in crime. And it let me try things that I was like, maybe would have been like, what are they going to say? Either like, what is the dominant white postmodern at the time? People, what are they going to say? Or what is like the classical Indian dance community? Like, I would be scared on both sides. And it just let me try things that I'm like, I don't really know yet, but I trust you to understand my intention and to tell me also if like I've moved into a direction that's deeply problematic. And so that, I think, was deeply freeing for me personally.
Fantastic. I think in real time space, you can be in your studio, but there are people outside the door walking up and down with certain aesthetics. Not that they would come in, but you would exit the space, and you three would exit that space, and people would be like, "What were they doing in that?" I think it's the amount of kind of self-censorship that goes on in institutions. I imagine that you got rid of a lot of that in the space that you created. That's what it seems like, at least.
It's interesting because part of it is that it's actually from the very first day been public on our blog. I mean, not that necessarily anybody reads it or looks at it, or actually, for that matter, by now can navigate it, because it's like, actually, it's for us, it makes sense because of the assignment structure, and we know what to search or how to search it and things like that. But I think, I mean, there was a tension around that we decided to, from the very beginning, to document it, but not in a hidden space, but to document it. So even the most raw sort of study, even the most raw experiment, and theoretically could be viewed by anybody.
I have to say that I forgot something, some important information in the beginning of this webinar, that if we have viewers that want to pose questions to Post Natyam Collective or to Jean-Paul here, please write them in the live chat, and we have a chat moderator who will forward the questions to you towards the end. But please write them quite soon if you have any questions already, so that we can have the time to see them. Sorry, Sandra, I hope I didn't interrupt.
No, I was done.
I just realized I had forgot that information, and I think we should have some feedback if there is our questions. Okay, I would like to, when I watch your creative work taking somehow form, piece by piece, during these assignments that you give to each other, and you let us into this process. I have seen many interesting small pieces of works for me. That is really, I feel it's a tryout. It is a way of speaking with yourself, but with the camera on somehow, and it becomes something very interesting for an outsider to watch, to follow. And it is also that you were speaking of this little safe space. It's quite, I feel it's something that makes you vulnerable, maybe, to put it on the, for others to watch. But it's so interesting that you actually let us in there, and yeah, it's like you are getting feedback also from, are you intentively letting in feedback from outside as well during this, when you post a film and you get feedback from anyone? When, yeah, I would like to know about this vulnerability and how it can affect your journey, your work.
I think theoretically anybody could post feedback, and sometimes we invite certain people too that we are interested in their perspective. But most often people feel vulnerable posting feedback. It's interesting. They give us the feedback individually, like they'll email it to us or phone call us. Often people don't actually want to, maybe we've created such a strong space that they're like, we don't want to appear in there in a certain way or whatever. But yeah, even invited people don't tend to write it. I mean, I do know that sometimes when people are particularly interested in their work, they've gone through the blog and our studio space online and learned more about us through it. But I don't think it's not like we're publicizing it. It's not a common thing that people would just randomly run into if they wanted to. I mean, if it's accident, yeah.
It is very interesting to follow this process, though, and I find that you get many small pieces of artworks within the whole process. So when do you think that, when do you know that, now this could be, it is time to maybe turn it into a production? Is it, do you let it just take the time it needs, a project, a research project, which is made in this distance process? You have an intention to make a production or a performance somehow, or is it happening during the way?
We have in the past. This borders resurfacing process that the work that you saw came out of was intentionally left as specifically a process. And so that we could see all the different things that could come out of it. There's writing, there's artwork, there's scholarly work, and then there's, pieces that you saw. And it's really, I think, up to the individual or maybe groups of us, if we start creating something together, to see if something is moving us to develop further. And this is the first time we've seen all of this work together, and Cynthia and I were sort of chatting back and forth about how actually so tight it is. Even though they all got developed separately, they really did come out of us investigating a process together and giving each other assignments and having little seeds come out of that and wander into different forms.
I think we made a decision fairly early on to prioritize process over product. And then also because of our, kind of less amount of funding, because of being scattered all over the world, also, because of the kind of obligations and duties that a lot of women have, being mothers, this, that, and the other, it's not always feasible for us to all physically come together for production. And so we've always kind of crafted our processes such that there's like lots of little seeds and sparks, and some of them are juicier than others. And then we individually or in smaller configurations might take it to fruition, whether it's a dance, film, a paper, a bigger production. And so that has generally been the way that we have treated our processes. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually recall that we decided that we wanted to make a production, and that Back to the Beautiful, which you guys did not see as part of this, was a priority in this particular process to a certain degree. I don't know, Sandra, maybe if you can weigh in, because we have slightly different maybe memories of this, which is also indicative of the collective.
No, actually, I think, I would have actually answered this probably a little differently, in the sense that from my perspective anyways, and I know my perspective is somewhat different in terms of being the only one in Europe. And therefore my relationship to the sort of productions is a different one. Yes, we did have this process, but for me, it's been more like when there was a chance or an opportunity or a kind of reason to create something, because there was a kind of context in which it could come to fruition. And I think that's what happened also with Back to the Beautiful. It was kind of a series of coincidences that led to it, and from my memory. So I don't remember starting the process with that in mind, but it started relatively early on, that the first sort of little string came up, which was like, oh, this could turn into something. And then one thing led to the other, and then it started traveling. And so, yes.
Do you want to tell the audience a little bit what Back to the Beautiful was / is, just for context?
Right. So the 3 videos that, which one? The first one, Borders of Altavab, Apart, and Sala San Lorenzo. So the first, and then one in the middle, and then the last one were the first 3 kind of videos that became in Salzburg, Austria. And it was as a kind of part of the final project of a program that the university has on curation, like for curators. And they had contacted or chosen some local artists to do something in collaboration with them for their final, or in dialogue with them, or for their final sort of curated event. And that was in 2017, but the process actually started right after 2015 or around 2015, when we actually saw several instances all over the world of sort of like borders just like springing up again, like either literally between countries or between people and communities, and sort of like a rise in discrimination, xenophobias, racisms. It was during the time that there was the large amount of refugees coming from Syria, and I'm actually walking, the time that they were walking from Hungary through Austria to Germany and then onwards. And so Salzburg, actually just tiny little town at the border, where I've been working for many years, just became sort of this sort of crystallizing point of this suddenly huge, large movements, and they became visible at this tiny little river, which is just a beautiful place to have a cookout, the Salar. But it's actually a national border, and suddenly it became this national border again, and there was like this global crisis actually being visualized and graspable at this border. So it became about water and borders, and borders literally resurfacing, or rivers that are national borders that suddenly become visible as such again. And then 2 years later, in 2017, it was just back to the beautiful river, and it was forgotten again. So that was sort of the starting point of that. But then it traveled to different places. So I think Cynthia, like Lost Chinatown, was connected to it. Fight the Fear became connected to it. So they're all somehow related back, but you can talk better to that. I'm sure.
Can I ask something in relation to what you just shared? You use this word triangulate in terms of art making, theory, and activism. And I wonder, I like the idea of triangulation because it's not a backwards and a forward between two things. There's kind of an energetic movement between 3 different things that is kind of swirling. And I'm wondering if at any point one of those gets pulled into focus more than another 2. I can imagine the other 2 are always there, but is there any moment in these works or projects that you feel that one of them really takes emphasis, if that makes sense?
Is it directed to me more? I don't know. I'm trying to think. So if anybody of you is faster.
It might. I would say they're all artworks. Many of them are really directly responsive to particular political situations, and some in very overt ways. Whether it's the kind of Muslim travel ban that Trump put in place, the refugee situation that Sandra was talking about, the lockdown in India, the experience of undocumented immigrants in California and in the border crossings there. But I think that like different things like kind of get pulled out or come to the forefront depending on what part of the process we're in, and also then what manifestation or product, if there is any, like what form that is taking as well. So earlier in the borders resurfacing process, we were doing a lot of like reading and watching other things, like including some academic papers about borders and migration, and kind of like having thoughts and discourses and some creative things in response to that before we like got into more making. I think that and different numbers, like, you know, people in the collective all kind of identify or feel differently about the word activist, but, you know, there are times where people will be at a protest and, you know, will bring their self to the world in that way. But I think it's maybe about, and then if we're writing an academic paper, obviously the theory like kind of comes to the forefront at that moment. So I would say it's like about different stages in our process, and then also what the kind of engagement, the kind of product that we're creating at that moment focuses on. But y'all can add in if you feel so inclined.
I just want to add, though, it's a comment more than anything else, but I think the incredible strength that I feel from the collective work that's been shown here, and I really come from the perspective of being situated in Northern Europe, in Sweden, the collective global majority perspective that comes through from all the work, whether it's Latin American, South Asian, Indian, Asian, that is so strong. For example, like a transnational notion of grief or sorrow in the global South, it's so very, very powerful. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. But yeah, that wasn't a question, just a comment.
No, thank you for that beautiful reflection. I think Shyamala, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think a lot of it comes out of our developing desire to really strongly be local while we're interconnecting, you know, through the cyberspace to each other, but to ground ourselves in our local worlds and communities and bring that to that conversation. So I think that might be what you see there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Lost Chinatowns is about a very specific set of local histories in the place that I live right now. And me making it was part of like trying to figure out this place. And then of course I did so in dialogue with my Post Natyam beloveds, right? Fight the Fear takes place in the literal like LA River. So we bring each of our different homes or our different contexts to the work, and but hopefully without sacrificing specificity. I think sometimes people think to make something transnational, you kind of like have to devolve to a kind of a sameness or a universality, and we actually like are really we really want to keep the specificity and the groundedness and locality.
I think it's just the curation of these particular materials make the point so clearly how, yes, specific, but also, wow, how the same across the board in very many different ways. I think in terms of the collectivism that the work speaks of, I think is very important for now in divisive times. It's very, I connected my brownness with other brownnesses, which I never expected to, put it that way. So that woke me up, for goodness sake. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But I'm like just looking from the outside. I mean, it's like having seen this, also kind of watching this screening with different eyes. What struck me as well is that actually, Fight the Fear is obviously been part of the process and related. And Shai, please correct me if I'm saying something wrong. But it has also, it's been developed obviously separate. Kind of independently of it with a separate set of collaborators as well, and to some extent this version of Lost Chinatowns as well is like a group version, which personally I've never I've seen Cynthia's solo version of it live actually when we did Back to the Beautiful in India, and it was on a different no I didn't. Wait, no, I saw Blood Run, but did I see it live? Actually, I forgot.
No, you've never seen Lost Chinatowns live.
No, I've never seen Lost Chinatowns.
No.
It feels like I've seen it live. I've seen Blood Run live, but I've never seen Lost Chinatowns. Funny. It's like, because I'm like, but I've seen it so often. but I just don't even remember if I've seen it live or not, actually, because we're so enriched. So this is one of the things, but also the group piece, I've never seen. And then, so this collaboration, which was also part of the selection, which I did with a different set of collaborators, Roti Dedo, which was with Shravanti and Shruti and Orko Jarat, which was done during the lockdown. What strikes me is that somehow that they still, the kind of flow it develops, even with the stuff that we've kind of created internally between the three of us, and also the pieces that we've done with other collaborators. And I don't know, I'm just like, it's my own observation, having seen this for the first time from the outside in this lineup, that it really did something quite different, but it, to me, also speaks to the kind of connectedness we have as in terms of this really long-term collaboration as well. I don't know if I'm being clear at all, but yeah, just sort of reflecting on seeing this.
It's like we're the collective, but the borders of the collective are a little open. We have open border.
Yes. Yeah.
For me, it is wonderful to see, as with the pre-knowledge of Indian classical dance and the language vocabulary with the hand gestures, mudra, the significant gestures that has we can give narratives to it. It is a stylized language with symbols, but you are making it, you break it open somehow for any kind of audience with different keys to watching your work. And for me, it is very interesting to see how you work with both the feet, just the feet, and the, like in the border Saval Jawab. How nuanced the feet of the, for me, I see a Kathak dancer, but you might not see that. I see Cynthia's feet, perhaps, and these boots, which are so stiff and so, they are not responding at all to the feet. And this is done in such a beautiful way for me to see just this very simple frame and the floor and two boots and a pair of feet in this very, very strong, for me, strong film. With 2 minutes, you say so much. Such a political statement or just a comment on what's going on. And, you know, I like that. I see that in so much of your work, how you just, with very simple one gesture, perhaps the Alapadma, which wiped around your face, can denote a very beautiful face, lotus-like face. But in the what I was watching before, the small piece I Am, when you are exploring different identities, multiple identities within the same person, trying out who am I and which culture, where do I belong, just using this mudra, this Alapadma mudra is so powerful somehow. It gives a new life to that symbolic gesture. I would love to hear more about your thoughts about using these gestures, maybe just detaching them from the context and making a completely new story around it, a completely new frame for the gesture. I'm very interested in that. So please, if you can share some of your, how you work with it, because it's so...
I can talk like a little bit specifically about Border Sawal Jawab, and you can chime in, Shyamala, of course. So that, that tiny little piece, that's like, it was Trump's first executive order, kind of banning people from largely like Muslim majority countries. And there's this incident where Hina Shamsi, who is a lawyer for the ACLU, who, you know, like does all these legal battles around constitutional rights. She was a green card resident at the time and a Pakistani citizen, and she got stopped at the border. And so there was this really moving kind of story she wrote about it on the like ACLU blog or something. And she actually writes out her memory of the dialogue between herself and the border agent and the kind of interrogation that she was subjected to. And so what we did is we took that actual text and kind of, edited, slimmed it down a little bit. And so Shyamala is speaking the actual words of the border agent. And then I was like literally looking at her words and trying to do the rhythm of her words with my feet to produce those rhythms. So those rhythms are like, obviously they draw upon the techniques that one uses in Kathak footwork and Tatkar. It doesn't follow like a kind of rhythmic structure or thal structure that would be typical of Hindustani classical music. And then I thought that, Kathak is associated with North India and Pakistan aesthetically. And so like my feet could kind of connect to her in that way as well. So that was that recontextualization. And please add in Shai if you have a thought about it.
No, that was exactly what we were doing at the time. And then I can elaborate a little bit more on the gestures. Like for me in Fight the Fear, when I was working with dancers who were not South Asian trained, not coming from the same background that I was, I made a little. We all did some writing, and based on these core ideas of borders resurfacing, on borders, on water, we had a series of things, and the whole cast did some writing, and then we all took out some key moments from that writing and made our own phrases. And so I made my phrase the common phrase that everybody could use, and they inserted their own phrases into my phrase and create. So they have their own bodies, their own languages, their own meanings in them, intersecting with my phrase. And so it may look so different on so many different bodies, but it has that core, some core gestures in there. And yet I feel like the process made it speak to the truth of their bodies and not me trying to impose a specific dance language on them that they weren't trained in and probably wouldn't do that well.
And it is also seen in the work. It is quite tough names to remember, all of these small films. In Salach, San Lorenzo, Two Rivers, Two Continents, where also I think the hand is making the bee or some over these stones. It's a gentle, very soft gesture, and it gives life to the hard stones. It is brilliant the way I feel that you are communicating with these gestures, where it is giving importance. It is giving relevance to the work. It is, yeah. So, Jean-Paul, do you have anything more that you would like to? I think we have to round up.
Yeah, nothing that won't take another 3 hours to talk about.
Yeah, I think we just started.
I did want to say there about the piece that you just mentioned with the stones and their feet, that there was something there that intrigued me around abstraction or abstract expressionism around that. And that I find super fascinating when we speak about this so-called ability to make universal art. I mean, art that is like not situated, as if there is such a thing as objective. And we know who gets to do work like that. But that was a moment where I thought, oh, this is super, super interesting. That I would have loved to have that conversation with you around who gets to do abstraction, who gets to, right, to universal, especially coming from artists of the global majority, put it that way. So anyway, just to leave it hanging there, I have nothing more. That was a little comment. I have no more questions.
I'll make a little comment in response, which is actually that Indian dance has a highly evolved abstract vocabulary, that like nritta is abstract rhythmic dance, and the gestures and mudras that we use, yes, they can be used for like multivalent storytelling, but they're also used as abstract shape and form. And so it's also like what gets to be read as abstract and universal versus like, you know, is this a movement? Is it a shape? Is it an aesthetic form, or is it performing Indianness, whether I like desire for it to or not? So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Savants,
I've been read. That's good. Thanks.
No, it's great. I love the conversation.
Yeah.
Have we got any questions from the?
Yeah.
No.
No, that's so strange. I have so many more questions for you. Wish we could go on for the whole evening. Well, it is evening here at least. I think you have before lunch now in.
Yeah.
Oh, you are in Munich. You are in Munich, Sandra.
Sandra's in Munich.
Yeah, so it's late.
Shyamala and Cynthia are in almost lunchtime land.
Yeah, it's lunchtime.
California.
I should have a late dinner by now. I am so happy that we could share these ideas, these thoughts, this whatever is coming up when we speak. It is my long time wish to be able to do this actually, and to have been connected with you in another way than I follow you on the website and I see works, but you know, it's really nice to meet you and have a dialogue around what I have seen, and to have also different perspectives on the same kind of work, what we see and what we can share. And I am really, really happy, and thank you so much. 5 minutes left. Yes. I thought you said 1 minute. I was okay. Great.
Shyamala has a thought.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I was thinking about you had brought out the simplicity of a gesture, but I was also just thinking about for both the first piece with the boots and then the last piece, which were primarily hands and stones and eventually bodies. It reminds me a lot of our work, other work that wasn't shown here today. We've done a lot. Once again, this is going back to Sandra's idea of kind of grassroots, right? We're not working with a camera crew often, sometimes, but often not. And so our long distance collaborations, because they were always mediated by the camera, I think we got really slowly interested in like, how can we frame parts of our body or make a statement with, you know, just the hands or just the legs or, you know, some part that we just became interested in zooming into that frame in a different way, with the very limited ways that we had just in our, you know, studies and in our assignments to each other. So I think that reads a lot, or that's coming through now in the more finished products as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting how the body, I mean, it's like, I think it's become a lot more commonplace now in the last year and a half. And specifically, if you've taken dance class online and things like that, it's like you either see the feet or you see the hands or you see the head. And I mean, we've been kind of dealing with that for so many years that it's become a part of the choreography, and also how to relate to the camera. And then in terms of the gesture, and because you were talking about the stones, like very personally, and maybe it's also because I also work in Northern Europe, and you know, the kind of for me, the switch from the US back to Europe was not so easy in terms of the kind of contemporary dance we're talking about, the kind of contemporary aesthetic we're talking about. And so I became really interested in intersecting gesture with very task-based movement. It somehow came from that perspective, and how they can interact, because I find this task-based movement in a very concrete and very abstract, at the same time, in a very similar way that the hand gestures are very concrete and abstract at the same time, or can be very concrete and abstract at the same time, and how to intersect those two is something that I think I became more and more interested in.
Thank you. And I was, it would be nice to wrap this up in talking a little about the choice, the name of the collective, the Post Natyam Collective. It's wonderful.
How long do you have?
Yeah, sorry, this was the wrong timing to bring up that. But can you please just tell us very short about the name?
Shyamala.
These two will have some wonderful, a section of our manifesto. Is that what you're going to say, Cynthia? Sure. These two will probably have a more scholarly interpretation of it, but I'll just say that, Bharatanatyam for me is my base form. I created a piece once that I called Post Natyam, post meaning postmodern or after or postcolonial. There are so many posts, and somehow in our conversation that eventually became the collective name. Even though it was the name of a singular piece, it suddenly resonated in so many other ways. Bubbly, do you want to say more, or Sandra?
No. All good. Yes.
Can we just read that last section performatively? Is that?
I actually can't open it on this. That's my problem.
We only have 1 minute, we're being told.
Oh, okay.
We have 1 minute. But
sorry.
Can I just add one thing though, that actually now as Post Natyam, we had been collaborating, Shyamala and I have actually, I think we did the first collaboration 21 years ago, in 2000 or 2001. But Post Natyam as a collective by that name is just now this weekend turning 17. So
we're 17.
Congratulations.
And it is, you've invited us on our anniversary weekend to this.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's very sweet. So Natyam is both Bharatanatyam, but also Natya is the sense of this kind of multifaceted performance form that is music and dance and theater and design rolled into each other. And post means many things, from post-colonial to maybe postmodern to doing things through the electronic post. So there's lots of different resonances for different ones of us. Yeah.
Maybe that is a great way to sum up also some of the what you represent and what you are doing. It is making a lot of sense to me, to that name.
Great.
So yes, our time is over, and I hope we can meet more and talk more. I hope that next time we have this festival, or any kind of festival. It doesn't necessarily have to be an Indian dance festival, right? It should be I want to invite you in person to be able to meet you here, and it would be wonderful with some collaborative work with to meet other dancers and choreographers here and to interact with the communities and the field here in Sweden would be lovely. I hope I will do that one day, and that we will meet.
That would be very fun.
We hope so.
I want to thank you all for joining us today, the Post Natyam Collective members and John Paul. I'm so happy that you can join in this very interesting
wonderful
discussion. And yes, I hope that you who have been watching this webinar will come to the live stage tomorrow in Stockholm, Huddinge, to watch a premiere of Margam. And we will see Sita Patel's Rite of Spring in its full-bodied version, filmed for screen. Yes, that will be lovely also. And we have a Kuchipudi dancer making a new interpretation within her frame, her style. So we have some more interesting things to be watching, and I want to thank you so much for joining this conversation, and I hope that that if you have not seen the online program with Post Natyam Collective, the collection and Lost Chinatowns, and also the yesterday program, please do it. You will be able to see it until 4th of October late. I mean, 1 minute to 12 CET. So please don't miss that. Thank you so much, and good evening, or have a nice lunch. You.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the
Thank you so much.